If you've been keeping up with Newgen Shonen and somehow haven't tapped into Gachiakuta, I genuinely think you're sleeping on one of the most unique series in the modern era. And yes, I said Gachiakuta, not Gachiakuta. And yes, I was under the same impression it was pronounced Gachiakuta until I got humbled in one of my comments on TikTok. By the way, go follow me on that, and why not subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. But enough of all that, let's get into it. We're in a time where the standard of battle shonen is insanely high. With shows like Jujutsu Kaisen, Chainsaw Man, and Demon Slayer, we have a very raised bar for animation and choreography in anime. So for something new to stand out, it has to bring more than just flashy fights. And Gachiakuta absolutely does. Let's really break down why this series feels different and why it deserves to be in the conversation for the best new gen shonen. The world building. This show throws you into a society built on literal waste. The elite live above in pristine and privileged society. The unwanted and accused, well, they're cast down into a massive abyss filled with trash. And that's not metaphorical trash, that's actual shit. It's such a simple concept, but it's powerful because the setting isn't just aesthetic, it's thematic. And the entire story revolves around what society deems worthless. And that theme hits you immediately through Rudo. Rudo isn't your typical bright-eyed, loud protagonist screaming about becoming number one. He grows up in the slums, surrounded by discarded objects, but those discarded objects he treats as treasures. He sees value in what others throw away, and that character trait isn't random, it's the foundation of the entire narrative. When he's falsely accused and literally thrown away like trash, the symbolism is heavy, and he becomes the very thing society labeled him as, disposable. But instead of breaking, he adapts. That transition from victim to fighter feels earned. It's not instant power fantasy, it's rage and confusion, and then purpose. So when Rudo is actually thrown into the abyss, we are then introduced to the power system. We've seen cursed energy, breathing techniques, and devils. Well, this show introduces something refreshing. The idea that objects can become weapons depending on their emotional resonance and connection. Characters use discarded items, things with history, things that meant something to someone, and then turn them into tools for combat. That is such a genius concept for this world. Because again, the theme reinforces the mechanics. Nothing is truly worthless, not objects and not people either. And what makes the fights engaging isn't just the powers themselves, it's how personal they feel. When someone wields an item, it's not just here's my special ability, it's this matters to me. There's a story baked into the weapon. That gives the battles in this show such emotional weight. And strategically, it keeps things interesting. Since abilities are tied to objects, creativity matters. You're constantly wondering how someone will use what they have, and it opens the door for unpredictable matchups and clever tactics instead of just escalating power levels. And that brings us on to the visuals. The graffiti-inspired art direction gives this raw, street-level energy. It feels grimy, sharp, aggressive, and not polished in a clean, corporate way, but that's all intentional. That aesthetic matches the tone perfectly because so many new gen series lean into this hyper-clean digital visual. Gachiakuta leans into texture. The chaos of the trash landscapes, the jagged designs, the urban influence, it all feels like something born from protest culture. And that matters because thematically, this is a story about rejecting the labels that are placed on you, about fighting back against systems that define worth by status. The art feels like it's yelling that message at you, and it's really apparent when you're watching the show. There'll be graffiti that catches your eye that you sort of go back and look at to see if it maybe has any foreshadowing potential, or if it's something political that you can just catch on to within the story. But let's get deeper into the themes, because this is where Gachiakuta separates itself from being just another action anime. At its core, this story is about discrimination and class division. The upper world literally throws its problems away instead of addressing them, and that is such a sharp metaphor for how societies often treat marginalized communities. Ignore, blame, and discard. The abyss isn't just a setting, it's a representation of systemic failure. Rudo's journey isn't only about revenge, it's also about confronting a structure that dehumanizes people. And sure, yes, part of his story is to get revenge, but we won't go into that because that's spoiler territory. What's interesting is that the story doesn't simplify this conflict into all rich people are evil and all poor people are good, but instead it focuses on systems, how they're built, how they're maintained, and how individuals either uphold or challenge them. That nuance gives the narrative weight. It really makes you think. Another thing that makes Gachiakuta stand out is its tone. Yes, it's intense. Yes, it has explosive fights, but it also knows when to slow it down. It gives space for character relationships to develop, it lets you see the world breathe, and that pacing is so important. A lot of new gen shonen move at breakneck speed, constant escalation, constant spectacle, which is fun and all, but it can also burn out emotional impact. Gachiakuta feels more deliberate. When something big happens, it lands because the groundwork was set beforehand. I'm a massive fan of someone like Togashi's writing, and to me, this show is slowly showing signs of becoming something great like Hunter x Hunter, but I won't give it that status just yet. By the way, seeing as Hunter x Hunter was mentioned, you should really check out my previous video on it. Let's talk about Rudo compared to other new gen protagonists. Yuji from Jujutsu Kaisen is defined by empathy and moral conflict. Denji from Chainsaw Man is driven by base desires and trauma. Tanjiro from Demon Slayer is compassion personified. Rudo, he's fueled by rage against injustice. But what makes him compelling is that his anger isn't shallow, it's layered. He's not just mad because something had happened to him, he's mad because the system that hurt him is bigger than one moment. He represents resentment towards being deemed worthless. That's relatable on a real world level. Everyone at some point has felt underestimated, dismissed, or looked down on. Gachiakuta takes that universal feeling and magnifies it through extreme world building. And I feel like Rudo is just an incredible MC for this type of anime. But what good's an MC if the supporting cast aren't as good? Strong new gen shonen always have memorable side characters. It's never just about the main character, and Gachiakuta understands that. The allies Rudo meets aren't just backup fighters, they each reflect different responses to the world they live in. Some are hopeful, some are hardened. That diversity of perspective adds depth. Instead of one-note personalities, you get a group dynamic that feels like a collection of survivors, not just a squad assembled for plot convenience. Take, for instance, Engine. Engine is a great character because he's the perfect mix of cool, responsible, and slightly tired of everyone's nonsense, which makes him ridiculously fun to watch. Engine shows up in the show with this calm, almost lazy confidence that immediately makes him stand out. He's the kind of guy who looks like he's been through a lot already. Messy hair, cigarette hanging from his mouth, coat swinging as he walks in like he owns the place. Instead of acting like a dramatic hero, he treats fighting trash monsters like it's just another annoying task he has to do in the day. He acts as a mentor to Rudo, but instead of being overly serious or preachy, he's sarcastic and often sounds like he'd rather not deal with the chaos around him, yet he still steps up when it matters. That mix of calm confidence, dry humor, and genuine care makes him feel human and relatable, while his skill and quiet authority make him naturally cool without ever needing to show off. Now you may be thinking, yes, you've just described Gojo, right? Well, no, not really. Because if you watch this show, which I really implore you to do, you'll understand exactly where I'm coming from when I say Engine is one of the best side characters in any new gen show. Let's address the big question. Is Gachiakuta on the same level as the giants of the era? It may not have the same mainstream explosion yet, and it may not have the viral fight clips dominating timelines, but what it has is identity. And in a crowded genre, identity is everything. It doesn't feel like it's trying to copy the formula, it's not chasing trends, it's building its own lane with gritty, thematic, and emotionally charged story. And honestly, that hunger is what makes it exciting. When you watch something that feels like it has something to prove, the energy is different. And Gachiakuta deserves so much more attention because the themes are so foundational. And to be honest, I think its boom is about to come. And when it does boom, I think it's gonna stay for a long time because the themes are so foundational. Worth, taste, class, identity, the story has room to evolve. It's not limited to just tournament arcs or escalating villains. The world itself is a source of conflict. As long as the divide exists, tension exists, and that opens the door for long-term narrative growth in a way that feels organic. Now, I haven't read the manga, and I don't plan to, because I don't want to spoil what I think is going to be an incredible run for this show. And let's also appreciate how rare it is to see a shonen series lean this heavily into symbolism without losing accessibility. You can watch Gachiakuta purely for action and enjoy it, but if you want to analyze it, there's so much there. The trash, the abyss, the objects gaining power, the act of being thrown away, it's layered storytelling wrapped in high energy battles. That balance is difficult to pull off, and honestly, the timing couldn't be better. New gen shonen fans are looking for the next series that feels fresh, especially after MHA just ended. Not just technically impressive, but culturally resonant. Gachiakuta feels like it's speaking to a generation that questions systems, that challenges labels, that refuses to accept being defined by circumstances. That cultural alignment is powerful. So when I say that Gachiakuta is one of the best new gen shonen right now, I'm not just talking about fights or animation quality. I'm talking about a world built around a sharp social metaphor, a creative theme-driven power system, a protagonist with layered motivation, strong visual identity, and emotional and philosophical depth. It feels intentional, hungry, different, and in an era stacked with heavy hitters, different is what stands out. If you're into New Gen Shonen and you care about storytelling that blends hype with meaning, Gachiakuta absolutely deserves your time. Because sometimes the stories about what the world throws away end up being the ones that matter the most.